Hello and welcome to another broadcast of On Purpose podcast. I am Thawana and I am so excited that you have joined us. Remember to like, to share, and to subscribe. You never ever want to miss when a new segment is released. So here we are. I am Thawana and this is On Purpose. We have a guest that I am so excited about. He has been a longtime friend of our family, and we're excited. We have served in ministry together. Our kids have grown up together. And so I'm really excited. So guys, if you will give me a virtual applause for James Presley. Okay, virtual applause. Thank you guys. Welcome.
Thank you.
Ooh, I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I feel like I'm a little nervous too. I don't know why.
It's a good thing.
It's a good thing? Yes. Okay.
Game
all right.
Time.
Okay. Game time. Oh my God. Coach is in the building, y'all.
Yes,
Coach is in the building. So again, this is James Presley, an amazing person, an amazing trailblazer. And so I wanted to share him with you guys. So tell us a little bit about yourself, family, dynamics, all of that, whatever you want them to know.
Thank you. Thank you. First, let me say thank you for having me today. It's an honor to be on purpose. No pun intended.
No pun intended.
But it's great to be here amongst family.
Yes.
And, so a little bit about me. I'm from Wildwood, Florida. Grew up on Jackson Street, raised by a single raised in a single family home by my mother, the late Dolores Isham. There were seven of us. Grew up in poverty, welfare, food stamps, but a promise from my mother that we would not stay on welfare and food stamps. She was a waitress in Wildwood, making $2.10 an hour, and taught us how to go get it and how to get out. So I've been blessed to remain in my hometown. I've served as a teacher, coach, assistant principal, and so journeyed. After about 18 years in education, I felt a call to shift to another place. And I'm sure with the subject matter at hand today, we'll get into that. I'm also the executive pastor of the local ministry here in Leesburg, Citadel of Hope Ministries, where, like Thawana mentioned in the introduction, we've served together in ministry. And our children grew up in that house, Citadel of Hope, under Apostle Danielle Williams. This is the first and only church I've ever joined and served in. I've been there in December. 30
I didn't know that.
30 years in December. First church I ever joined. Yeah, in 1994. At the passing of my mother, I was looking for a place to get right.
To get right.
And I found Citadel. My sisters were attending there, so I visited. And long story short, some 30 years later, I'm still loving God, loving the ministry, loving people, serving the communities of Lake and Sumter County. So that's a little bit about me in a nutshell. But I should mention the school that I'm currently leading. God graced us to found this school. The school was not in existence when I started. And then the Lord gave me a divine vision to implement a certain system for students that he termed non-traditional students in an alternative setting. So long story short there as well. Hope time permits for us to share a little bit about that journey.
Yes.
And 3 years after starting this new system, out comes a school called Sumter Prep Academy. The prep is not preparatory, it's positive response education program.
Right, because people will think...
they think that's a preparatory school. But it's not. It's a positive response education program. And it's internationally known, nationally known, locally known. And so to God be the glory for that story and process.
Wow. Yeah, we're definitely going to dig into that. So, family dynamics, like.
Oh, how could I forget the most important part?
Your amazing family.
I am married to Yolanda Presley, also known as the real estate lady.
Woo!
It's a true story. The day that I visited Citadel, that was on 2005 Johns Avenue, when I walked through the door, she was ushering. Aww. And so I walked through the door, toe up from the floor up.
Wow.
And she ushers me to a seat. Over time, she tells the story that when she went back to her place of ushering, she told her usher partner at the door, "I just walked my husband to his seat."
Why have I never heard this?
It's an incredible story.
What?
I didn't know her at all. My sister knew her, and over time, married. We have 2 wonderful children.
Oh.
And Malachi and Shekinah. Shekinah's up at FAMU, about to graduate in
Yes.
May, and Malachi's with us, and decided to go a different route. That will definitely be a part of my story with this topic as a parent, because there's professional, there's parental, and there's prophetic fear.
Wow. Oh, this is going to be good, y'all. This is going to be good.
There's the 3 that I've experienced, those 3.
Wow. Okay, so back to this love story. Like, Yolanda is, me and my twin sister call her our good friend.
Yeah.
And so I remember those days when we used to usher, whether we wanted to or not, but what?
Yeah, so the first episode of fear, now that we're in it.
Yes. Okay, what we're talking about today is showing up afraid.
Yeah.
Okay, showing up afraid. Yeah. And when God gave that to me, He gave me James Presley. And you're going to understand why. Okay.
Yeah. So the first episode of fear was on our first date. I built up enough courage to ask her out. Aww. We went to, at that time, my favorite joint was Bennigan's over in Orlando.
Yes.
And had a conversation. She ordered a lot, but she didn't eat any of that food.
What?
We'll talk about that later.
I think she was testing you.
She was. She was. I'm glad I passed it, by the way. So we're sitting there, and we're having a conversation. And the conversation evolved into relationships, past relationships. And how do you feel about current relationships? And at the time, she told me a story of that her reservation about dating was because when she would start dating, when she told the person her story about relationships and what she was coming out of, they would disappear. They would not, no other dates.
Really?
So I asked her to tell me the story. What's the story? And she told me the story of an individual she was dating who was murdered in Daytona while she was in school. And the trauma that experience caused her.
Nobody wanted to deal with it.
Didn't want to deal with it. They didn't want to deal with it. I looked across the table and I said, "I'm not going anywhere."
Oh, I don't have any tissue.
I'm not going anywhere.
Oh.
And she didn't believe me. She said a lot of them said the same thing. Same thing.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness.
So the fear of relational, dealing with the trauma that comes into a relationship,
right,
from each individual. Because what she did not know, I had my own trauma. I needed her just as much as she needed me.
So how in knowing that, James, how could you confidently look at her and say that you're not going anywhere? How did you know you weren't going anywhere? Because you had your own.
Well, prior to the first date, I think if we're smart, I think I was, we do research and we check an individual out from a distance. And then we meet their family. When I had an opportunity to meet her mother, who literally took me in as a son.
Love her.
Now, she showed me my place on the couch and where to sit and how to remain there, how to remain on the couch.
That's her. That's her.
But she would also, she understood my mother. She's from Coleman. Their family's from Coleman, the next town over from mine.
Really?
So we knew, like people, conversation. She knew of the trauma I was dealing with, which was also a passing. Yolanda was dealing with the passing of her former boyfriend. I was dealing with the passing of my mother.
And Miss Lily knew
Miss Lily knew it.
Miss Lily is Yolanda's mom.
Yeah, she knew it. So she would send these plates by Yolanda. I think she gave her a time frame to deliver the plate because she never stayed long. She would deliver the plate and then journey on back to Douglas Street where they were living. And I would come over and thank them for the plate and sit in my little spot. And so when you meet real people, like real people, like these are real people, real recognizes real. So,
True.
And we had some similarities. Her father wasn't around, my father wasn't around. We had conversations that made me feel as if this is where I need to stay. Because I left a relationship in Wildwood that was a great relationship. But when my mother passed, I needed Jesus. I needed church. I needed God. I needed people who could show me him. Because I was from the streets. I didn't grow up. I went to church. My mother required us to go to church. But I was there on requirement. I wasn't there on relationship. I was just there on requirement. So I had a disdain feeling about people in church, especially pastors.
Wow.
Especially pastors.
So how did you make the decision to come that one day? Were you invited by one of your sisters, or were you just in that place where you said, I gotta go?
You sure your audience want to hear this? They can handle this?
They can.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So I'm the probation officer in Lake County.
Right.
Juvenile Justice Probation Officer for young adults. They called it community control back then, community control officer. And I get sent to Tallahassee to a 3-day conference. I get to this hotel and I see a young lady walk in the hotel and register, and so did I. I go in to the elevator, push the door, and it opens, and she's in there. I don't say anything to her. She don't say anything to me. I leave out. I left something in the car. I go back to the same elevator. I don't know how she got back in the elevator, but she's there again. The next morning, I walk into the conference room, and she's sitting in the conference. She's from Juvenile Justice in Jacksonville.
Okay.
And third day, individual asked me to go out with a group from the conference. And I said, sure, let's go. The night before that invitation, I had made a list because of my trauma. And at that time, I just wanted to get even with people. Yeah.
Okay. Talk about it.
I had made a list to get even. And that meant my plan was when I returned back to Wildwood, I was going to get even by any means necessary with people who had hurt anybody in my family. I had a plan.
Did you?
Oh my goodness, I had a plan. I had like a list of 25 people on this list.
What?
That were going to experience some hard times. We'll put it that way. So we go out. We're sitting at this table at the mall in Tallahassee, in Quincy's at the time. And they're talking about church. And I'm sitting quietly. And I had enough. So finally I joined the conversation. And I tell them how I feel about church.
About church.
Specifically pastors. Of which now I am one.
Look at God. Look at God.
So I had this conversation about pastors, and the girl that was in the elevator, that was in the conference, that was at the luncheon, said this to me. She said, James, I've been watching you for 3 days in this conference. She said, you are probably going to be very successful in whatever area you choose. She said, you're probably going to get the house, the car, the family, the children, the profession. She said, but I got one question for you. She looked at me and she spoke to my spirit. She said, what profits a man to gain this world and lose his soul?
Don't know her from a can of paint.
I don't know her, and I don't even understand what she just said to me because I'm not from that.
Right.
So I said, what? And she said, let me break it down to you. What good is it going to do you to get everything that I listed and then die and go to hell? I understood that. So we get ready to leave and something happens. I don't know what, but all I know is I just want to bust out and cry.
Oh.
I am about to explode in this vehicle she's driving. And all
because you were together.
Yeah,
you
rode
rode
in
together.
the same vehicle.
Okay.
So all I want is her to get back to the hotel so I can get out of this moment and figure out what just happened. Because something is trying to cause me to have an experience that I don't understand. She stops and get gas.
Oh my goodness.
And now it's like stop it. Like, you better not do this in front of these people because you don't even know what you're about to do.
And you could not contain it. It was hard to put a lock on it.
I could not contain it at all. It's something that had shifted. A defining moment has happened. This is in retrospect, of course. But I don't know what it is and why it's happening. But something she said has spoken to something in me.
So had you talked to her before that moment?
The only thing I asked of this girl was from a gentleman who rode to the conference with her. I asked about her because of carnal reasons. And he told me, listen, she's not wearing a ring, but she's married, she has a family, she's in the church in Jacksonville. Get that out of your mind. So I got that out of my mind because there was a line back then about married people. You just didn't do what people, you just didn't do that. So, okay, cool. I get back finally to the hotel. I walk to the hotel door. True story. Swipe the card, open the door, and a light as bright as your studio light hits me, and I fall into the hotel.
What?
That's how I got saved. I fell, and I'm rolling around on all of the stuff I had drank the night before with the buddy that was up there. And I'm asking God to save me alone in a hotel room in Tallahassee because of an evangelist from Jacksonville. And long story short, the list that I created, I tore up. And to answer your question of how I got to Citadel, I tore the list up and I said to God, if you help me to leave Wildwood, then I will give you my life, because I knew I could not serve in Wildwood.
Couldn't stay there.
Couldn't do it. So when I got back, I ended a relationship I had been in for 6 years. Because the one thing that I wasn't going to do, and this is the fear of the unknown, the one thing I knew I couldn't do was, and wouldn't do, was play with God, because that was my disdain with church. I felt like people played with God.
And so you were not.
I was not going to do that.
If you were in, you were all in.
I'm totally in.
Gotcha.
I asked God to help me to move. I come to Leesburg. I pursue an apartment. The lady tells me, if you can bring me $350 by this date, I have an apartment. You can move into this apartment. I don't have the money. She calls me. She says the apartment's ready. It's 2 weeks after I leave Tallahassee. And I remind God that I said, if you help, he said, go to your bank. I go to my bank. I put my card in, do a balance inquiry. There's $350 in the bank. I don't know how it got there. It's there. God. I got that money out so quick. Took it to Leesburg. Woke up Sunday morning. I'm tired. I'll go next week. And I heard my words. If you help me to move, I will serve you. And I jumped and went to Citadel. And that's how I walked in that day. On a conversation at a table.
Wow.
That shifted my life. I didn't even like the 2 weeks in Wildwood. I couldn't go out. I didn't like being out, being hanging. It was just different. I was ready to. I knew I had to shift.
So you had to remind yourself of what you said to God.
Yep.
Typically, it's in the reverse.
It is.
We like to remind God of what He promised us.
That is correct. So, the first fear was the fear that my words meant nothing. That I said something to God, the God that watched over 7 kids with a single mother. And we were struggling, but at the same time, we didn't die in it. So she was a church-fearing woman, very, very, a prayer warrior out of this world,
Wow.
So, so that's how I got to Citadel.
Oh my goodness. Guys, I have learned so much. Like, oh my goodness. Yep. Okay, this is really good. So, let's talk a little bit about the kind of work that you do, because I think we have a few more minutes.
Okay.
But the kind of work that you do and the kind of children that you serve, and were you ready for that? Like, did you clearly had not done that kind of work before, working with at-risk kids.
Yes, right.
So how long have you been doing that? And I'd love to know, we typically, when we work in education, we focus on how we are able to change children. But most of the time, children are changing us. So how has this kind of work changed you? So tell us a little bit about the work.
Okay.
and yeah.
My transition to the alternative school, I actually started when I decided to shift from wanting to be a college coach, a university college coach, to wanting to be an administrator in a school. I was in Orlando, Florida, as a dean and head coach of boys basketball, but I was taking courses to earn a degree in ed leadership. This one particular day at the school, a student who was walking with a backpack had some blue and white beads in it, and it just so happens that the beads fall out on the sidewalk where he's walking to class, and the kids that are standing there are kids that wear red and white. So they thought that the boy was being disrespectful towards their colors, and a fight broke out. Actually, a brawl broke out. I get this student, the little boy with the beads, back to my office, and I give him my anti-gang speech. And this is the first lesson I learned from a student. He pulls out, while I'm talking, he pulls out some pictures from the same bag. He sits them on my desk, and he looks across at me, and he said, "Mr. Presley, I didn't join a gang. I was born into the gang."
Oh my.
Those pictures were him as a baby. Blue and white diaper. Blue and white rattler. Blue and white clothes, baby clothes. Everybody, his family in the background, blue and white.
Born into
He said, "I didn't join it." So he looked at me, he asked me, "How do you get out of something you were born into?"
Oh my goodness. How old was this kid?
This is a high school student, 9th through 12th. And he asked me that question that day. He said, "How do I get out of something that I was born into? You want me out of the gang that I didn't join."
What?
And I sat back, Tawana, praying in my mind, Holy Spirit, help me.
Right.
Because this boy has asked me a question that has me stuck. And the Holy Spirit said, how did you get out of what you were born into? You were born into poverty, lack, struggling, drugs.
Stop it,
and the list goes on and on. How did you get out? And I looked across at him and I said, young man, if you want to get out of a thing that you were born into, get a quality education. Because education has a way of pulling us out of what we were born into. We start to see things differently. The world around us start looking differently, and we want better.
Yeah. We
Because
hope
we've
for
gone
better.
through that process.
Yes.
So now faith is the substance of things hoped for. So education builds this hope in us that there's a better day. And so that was a moment where a young man pulled an answer out of me that has been the anthem of my leadership in education.
Wow.
Helping individuals to get out of things they were born into.
Oh my goodness. I tell you, like, to say that I've known you for so long, I don't know that I've ever heard. And for me, like, it's so powerful because it just makes you see a person differently in the most amazing way, because I thought I knew your story, your journey. I really did. But to hear it and to share it with you guys, like, I think is an amazing gift.
Well, today is on purpose. Right?
Oh my gosh.
Today is on purpose.
This is good. Let me
say one other thing
Sure.
about that moment as relates to fear and how we're connecting it. All of us have something that has to come to a consciousness. There's a consciousness. So when you have a consciousness about a thing, for example, I have a consciousness about who I am as an African American person.
Yes.
So because I have a consciousness about who I am as an African American person, there is no way that I can't like you.
No way.
Because if I love who I am from that consciousness,
right,
I love you.
Yeah.
Because you're,
here
we go.
Yeah.
I have a consciousness about it.
Wow.
So when we have a consciousness, real quick, about a thing, when we understand the similarities of those who have that consciousness, I can't walk past you and don't speak. It's like walking past myself.
It is.
And not speaking.
It is.
I can't not acknowledge you, like genuinely care for you, unless there's an experience between you and I that causes me to have to decide if it's safer for me to stay away. But I still have a consciousness. So I love you from a distance. I pray for you. I wish God's best for you. I don't try to stop you or hinder you in a thing.
Right.
Because even though we may not jive together, we still got the same consciousness.
That's crazy. Wow. That is so.
So he woke up a consciousness that day that he and I are just like each other. He was born into some things that he needed help out of, and so was I.
The things were different, but the consciousness
Was the same.
Oh my goodness. So do you know how he fared? Like, I mean.
Well, my journey ended up causing me to have to leave that school.
That's what I thought.
And so I believe that when it comes to fear and faith, that one man watered, planted, another man waters, but it's God that gets the increase.
It is. And the human side of us likes to know how things ended.
We want to stay that connected.
Yeah, but you're so right. Like, it's about just planting that seed and allowing God to do the rest.
The segue into, and I know we got one or a couple minutes or whatever, but the segue into your second part of your question was I move up. I get an assistant principal's job in my hometown.
Mm-hmm.
I am solid. I am happy. I am great.
I remember that moment.
My life changed again when a prophet from Africa visits our church and prophesies a new position over my life. And 2 weeks later, my friend, my brother, the principal that's sitting in that role, my friend and my brother from another mother comes in 2 weeks after the prophecy he knows nothing about and throws me his principal keychain with all the keys on it and says that I've made a decision to move to another position, and I have informed the superintendent that if it be your desire that you should be the next principal. Now, you'll have to go through the process and interview and do all of those things, but as relates to me, then he tossed the keys.
It's you.
He
Tag,
said,
you're
I'm
it.
done.
Wow.
You're it.
Wow.
And then the faith and the fear walk intensifies.
Uh-oh. Okay. That's where, guys, there's another segment coming. We are going to continue this conversation, but just in this moment for this segment, I am humbled. I am.
To God be the glory.
Yeah, like it feels like we're just kind of catching up, and you guys just happen to be a part of it. But that's what I love about these moments, is because it's just genuine. It's transparency, and it's real conversation. You know, people go to church and they get a lot of preaching, and I love that, and for all of us.
Yes.
But sometimes people just need real conversations on who we are and what we've been through. It helps people to feel like, okay, I can do this. If he could do that, then I can do this.
Yes.
So this is exciting. So thank you, you guys. Make sure you catch the next segment, because there will be a part 2 to this. I don't know that I ever actually did a part 2, but there will be a part 2 to this. Showing up afraid. Okay. So thank you so much, James, for sitting with us. Thank you. Again, this is Thawana. This is On Purpose, and we're so excited that you were able to sit with us. And remember, whatever you do, do it on purpose.